bring Durso in. New news today on the NHL, and let's get it from Kevin Durso, who covers the Flyers in the NHL for 97.3 ESPN.com. And Kevin, obviously, hockey was waiting over the weekend to get some good news, and was the news good today between the NHL and the Players Association?
It is at the start for sure. I mean, the tentative agreement on return-to-play protocols is a big step in getting back on the ice. The only other part of this that now needs to get completed is getting the CBA finalized, and they've been working on that extensively. They worked on it late into the evening last night. They're working on it again today, and the hope is that somewhere in the next, hopefully in the next 24 hours or so, or within the next 24 hours, that there is news that has been tentatively agreed to, and that it goes into the ratification process, which would then be the Board of Governors has to ratify it, and then the Players Association would have a full membership vote. So it's going to be a process that lasts throughout most of the week, but you still have that timeline to get to your target date of training camp in Phase 3. And if you're looking at hopefully about a week's time, July 13th is the date we keep hearing now. It was originally July 10th, but they're talking the 13th now. It sounds like you're going to be able to get to that date if you can get this thing finalized and get the tentative agreement in place by, say, the end of the day or early tomorrow, and send it to the player vote hopefully very soon to get it finalized by the weekend.
Right, so July 13th, it looks like at the earliest, with the start of play in Phase 4 to begin around August 1st in the two hub cities, Toronto and Edmonton. Is that what we have kind of come to expect at this point? July 13th at the earliest. They hope to begin August 1st, Toronto, Edmonton.
That's correct. So July 13th would be the start of Phase 3 with training camps. The goal would be about 2 weeks from then, around July 26th, to get the players to the hub cities, and games would begin right around August 1st. The Eastern Conference is going to go to Toronto. The Western Conference is going to go to Edmonton. And then after the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, once you get down to the conference finals and you have 4 teams remaining in this thing, everything shifts to Edmonton at that point, and the rest of the season will take place there. But getting all of that together, and at this point too, well, without actually having, again, still official word on what the hub cities are, everybody's just saying Toronto, Edmonton. It's pretty much a given at this point, and it's going to be out as soon as they release all of the finalized details, not just of the return to play, but the CBA as well.
I saw Elliot Friedman tweet this out, and I want to get your thoughts. Return to play stage 4 states, individuals leaving without permission may be subject to consequences up to and including removal. In addition, violations will result in, for clubs, significant penalties, potentially including fines and or loss of draft choices.
Yeah, and I think the reasoning behind all of that is that once you get to Phase 4 of this plan and you get into the hub cities, in order for this to work, the players have to agree to what is going to happen with it. Now, granted, if any player feels like there's any level of discomfort, the same way we're talking about in baseball or any of the other sports, there is an opt-out period for players. So once this thing gets ratified and once the Players Association with a majority, and all they need to do is have a majority vote. So once the Players Association has a majority vote on this and votes in favor, then it's in effect. Players have 3 days from that point to opt out of this return to play scenario without a penalty. So certain players may come out and say they don't feel comfortable. Who knows how many really will at this point? There's not really any indication that a lot of them will. We just keep hearing that some are not so comfortable with it, but maybe as things get laid out, they will become comfortable with it. We'll just have to see where that goes. But that's really their chance to either accept the bubble life that's going to come with the hub cities or get out of it and just stay home. Anything after that has to be in compliance with this return to play protocol and has to be on par with what the NHL is laying out for them as what they're able to do. And they're going to try to give them things to do. It's not going to be just hotel life and that's it. They're going to try to allow for them to have the ability to do things like outdoor movies or even select opportunities to get onto golf courses at specific times, things like that. So they'll have the ability to do some things within this bubble life. But if they do anything or any team violates any part of this and goes off course, then yes, there are going to be significant penalties to this, because the only way for this to really work is to keep the players in control. And the testing that's going to go on inside of these environments is insanely extensive, as it needs to be in order to pull this off. It's not just the players and the coaches and team staff. It's anybody who works around it. So you're talking any hotel staff, anybody who would be part of making sure that everything functions properly around it. So they're going to really be testing a lot of people to make sure that this is staying out of that environment as much as possible.
This could be a little bit of a reach, but I just thought about this as you were explaining it. What if you're a UFA and you don't really care about that team's picks for next year, or you don't care about what's going on with that organization down the road if you don't think you're going to be back? Do you think that plays a factor?
I think it still plays. It plays a little bit of a factor, but I don't think it will go too far in the sense that, I think that in addition to them talking about teams having significant penalties and possibly losing draft picks, I think there would also be something on the individual as well, that it might result in player fines or anything like that. And if that's the case, then I think players would be very, very careful about what they did and making sure that they stay within the guidelines, because they don't want to. They might not want to take a fine. I can only imagine that it would be just as significant from the individual standpoint as it is from the team standpoint.
Kevin Durso covers the Flyers in the NHL, of course, trying to get back out there. They released a statement today on COVID testing. 396 players for the optional participation in Phase 2. With that, it looks like 23 positive tests. So how is the NHL feeling about how their testing is going? Because baseball's having all sorts of problems. How is hockey feeling about the way theirs is going?
I'd say they're feeling pretty good, all things considered. And again, you don't want to keep seeing tests pop up, but I think from the last time we talked and the last update that came out about a week ago, it's 8 new positive tests within Phase 2, but also nearly 150 more players being tested too. I think we went from 250 to the 396. So you're talking a sizable increase in the amount of players being tested. The 396 is also roughly half of the league. So to get a rate right now that's under 6% total over the course of almost a month-long period out of half of the league is a positive sign that things, especially when you look at how things are being handled, where the hub cities are located, that hopefully things will be able to stay in favor. Another good, encouraging sign that came out today is that of the 23 players we're talking about, that includes the original list of 11 that was out from the very beginning that included players on the Tampa Bay Lightning. But the Tampa Bay Lightning actually confirmed that the players that had tested positive and the staffers that tested positive have recovered and returned to being able to work out and go to the facility. That's a sign that also there's advancement in the recovery process, that they have not only had this confirmed positive, were removed, they had to shut down the building, all of that, and they were able to work their way back to reopening and getting those players back. So as long as you continue to see that positive advancement too, that's another encouraging sign for what happens and how you handle positive tests when it happens. And if it were to happen well beyond this Phase 2 portion that we're currently in and into Phase 3 and Phase 4. Phase 3 is going to be the big X factor in this, though, because you still have everybody in a bunch of different locations, and you still have to be mindful of what the players are doing and making sure that they're staying within the guidelines of what the league is going to want to make sure they can get to this hub city bubble without having any infection brought in. So that's the real area where you need to be careful with this and to see what happens. But all in all, I think those numbers show positive trends. The fact that of the original group, you're hearing about recoveries and returning, and the numbers don't seem to be increasing all that much. It was 4 new cases within the Phase 2 protocol from the 2 weeks ago to last week, and now it's 8 with a sizable increase in the number of players reporting. I think that it just continues to lend itself to positive trends to getting back and being able to maintain low numbers throughout and isolate those players so you can actually get on the ice and pull this off.
Do you think the amount of testing needed is going to be an issue? I saw reports that it's easy to envision requiring 2,000 tests per day at the beginning of the tournament, which is 20,000 tests in the first 10 days.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how much is going to go into this. That's definitely a thing, because it's obviously the one thing that we know about this is that it's not going to be cheap, and it's going to cost the league a lot of money to make sure they're testing properly. But it also, one of the things I've said about this from the beginning in terms of trying to return is that the NHL does have an opportunity here, and I'm sure that they see this, to have some added exposure too. If they're the league that pulls this off and finds a way to come back and not only come back but sustain it and have nothing really go wrong in terms of stopping the whole thing in its place, it's why I said what I said about going to Canada too and using cities in Canada, is that if you know the situation's better in Canada and you want to try to split things up, one city's in the United States like Vegas and one's in Canada, Well, what happens if the U.S. city is the one that disrupts the whole plan? It's going to look really foolish that you even picked one of them when you knew cases were rising, and it totally loses the merit of what you were trying to do. It's going to probably stop the thing in its tracks, and it ruins it for everybody, even if Canada's got it under control. So I think they've made a smart decision to go to Canada to set themselves up for success and to be able to possibly play through this, because I think that once they start to get the testing where they want it and they have the number of tests they need at the beginning to start with this and do it on an active basis, the key also is to make sure that they're returning the tests quickly. It sure sounds like that from what I'm gathering, that they're issuing these tests and getting them back quick enough to know when to get someone off the ice and to get them out of the situation. Baseball's talking about guys who are waiting multiple days to find out if they have the virus or not, and they're in a waiting period and they don't know whether or not they should report or not, or they're held out for that reason. It sure seems like this is allowing for players to know very quickly what their situation is and to be able to determine whether or not it's safe for them to go on the ice and safe to be around the rest of their teammates and any of the staff that's with them or not. So I think that there's a lot of things in place that the NHL is doing right to make sure testing is going to be handled the right way.
All right, Durso, we'll leave you with this. I know there's a lot of reporting about what's going on in the hub cities and what it's going to look like. Are the players are staying there, right? I mean, they're staying in Toronto. They're staying in Edmonton. Is there certain areas that have been kind of, blocked off for them? I mean, they don't have a hub specifically like Disney World does where they're all on one property, correct?
Yeah, it wouldn't be like that where they're all on one property, but to my knowledge, the way it's going to be handled is that each city would be able to allow for certain areas for the players to be able to be in some way. And they're working with a lot of the general things that you would expect when you go on, for players when you go on a road trip. You want to know you have a place that you can go out to eat, or you want to know that you have maybe some activity you can do. And that's what they're trying to work into this plan, giving players something else to do besides just being there and playing. And there's also, the other key thing is that if you're going to live there for an extensive period of time, especially if you're one of these teams that has maybe if you're one of the teams in the Eastern Conference who's going to go to Toronto, but you have your sights set on Edmonton because you want to be one of those last four playing, that's not only traveling to one city and staying there for a while, but eventually you're going to another, and you may not be seeing your family that whole time. So the integration of bringing families in after a certain point is also on the table. And that was a big part of determining players who were able to play or not. It wasn't just a matter of in this current time, especially while everybody is still with their families, even if someone that is, even if the player goes home and someone in their household has tested positive, the player themselves are forced to then isolate and are deemed unfit to play as a result of it. So that's why it's such a touchy issue, is because of the fact that the players don't want to leave their families, but you have more people that you would bring into the situation, and you kind of want to cut down on the number of people who you're exposing yourself to and exposing to that environment to potentially keep that number down. So as things go on, maybe that'll be integrated. But yes, to my knowledge, it's going to create an environment where they have other things to do, and they're not limited to just one hotel, one rink, and that's it. There's going to be a little bit of an area that they have where they're able to be and do certain things so that they're not just limited to one area, but it is not built like Disney World is or anything like that, where there's actually a property that is already inside of that sort of bubble space.
For more, 97.3 ESPN.com, Kevin_Durso. He's got the plan all mapped out, and hopefully nothing gets knocked off track. Kevin, you're a gentleman and a scholar.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, man. You like all gets a beard via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.